By September 1941, the standard German infantry squad advancing into Ukraine carried 9 Karabiner 98K bolt-action rifles, each requiring the shooter to manually cycle a 5-round internal magazine between shots, sustaining approximately 15 aimed rounds per minute. The Mauser-designed weapon, inherited from Imperial German doctrine emphasizing marksmanship over volume of fire, demanded 13.2 man-hours of machined precision manufacturing per unit. Against entrenched Soviet positions at distances under 100 meters, the dominant engagement range in forests and urban rubble, this firepower architecture collapsed into a fatal mismatch. Soviet GKO directives of mid-1941 authorized mass production of the ppsh-41 submachine gun, designed by Georgy Shpagin to replace the PPD-40's milled receiver with stamped sheet metal components. The ppsh-41's carbon steel body required only 5.6 man-hours to manufacture, a 59% reduction in production time that transformed Soviet industrial capacity from a bottleneck into a fire hose. Factories in Moscow, Zagorsk, and evacuated facilities in the Urals began delivering 3,000 units daily by spring 1942, feeding 7.62 times 25mm Tokarev cartridges into 71-round drum magazines at a cyclic rate of 900 rounds per minute. If you're interested in how wars are actually decided by logistics, math, and doctrine, subscribe now, turn on notifications, and stay tuned for more in-depth World War II analysis. Let's continue. The tactical mathematics proved devastating for Wehrmacht assault formations. A single Soviet rifleman equipped with the ppsh-41 could sustain 100 rounds per minute in controlled bursts, outpacing an entire German rifle section's combined fire rate by a factor of 6. At Tula in October 1941, factory worker militias, soon armed with early ppsh-41s, repelled the 2nd Panzer Army's infantry probes, the stamped receivers absorbing recoil through fiber bolt buffers attached to return spring guide rods. The 3.63 kilogram unloaded weight permitted Soviet soldiers to carry 3 loaded drums, 213 rounds, without exceeding the load capacity that crippled German grenadiers burdened with ammunition for the squad's single MG-34 machine gun. German monthly replacement training capacity stood at 85,000 infantry by December 1941, insufficient to offset the approximately 775,000 casualties accumulated since June. Soviet factories operating on 3 shifts with predominantly female labor forces, a manufactured ppsh-41s faster than the Wehrmacht could graduate recruits from Wehrkreis depots. The stamped receiver's hinged front pivot allowed field-expedient maintenance by semi-trained conscripts, while the Kar98K's precision tolerances required armorers schooled in pre-war standards. This industrial velocity, weapon production outpacing human replacement, represented a strategic inversion. The Red Army was becoming better armed as it grew smaller, while the Wehrmacht diluted its firepower across expanding front lines. Inside factory number 367 in Zagorsk, a woman's hands guide a sheet of 2mm pressed carbon steel into the stamping press. The machine descends with 40 tons of force, transforming flat metal into the curved receiver section of a ppsh-41 in 8 seconds. This single operation, repeated across 3 shifts, 7 days per week, produces receiver housings at a rate the Degtyaryov PPD-40's machined design could never match. The hinged front pivot mechanism, visible as 2 workers rivet the barrel jacket to the receiver body, eliminates the need for precise threading. Assembly requires alignment, not skilled machining. The barrel cooling jacket receives a chrome-lined tube cut from Mosin Nagant rifle blanks, repurposing existing industrial capacity at Tula and Izhevsk arsenals already configured for 7.62mm bore dimensions. Chrome plating extends barrel life to approximately 10,000 rounds before accuracy degradation becomes tactically significant. The 7.62 by 25 mm Tokarev cartridge, standardized across both the TT-33 pistol and Spagen's submachine gun, achieves muzzle velocity of 488 meters per second, sufficient to penetrate German winter uniforms and light body armor at 100 meters. The weapon's defining tactical feature arrives on railcars from Kovrov Arsenal. 71-round drum magazines copied directly from Finnish Suomi KP/-. 31 designs captured during the Winter War. Each drum weighs 1.8 kilograms when loaded, transforming the 3.63 kilogram weapon into a 5.43 kilogram sustained fire system. Cyclic rate of 900 rounds per minute empties the drum in 4.7 seconds of continuous fire, but tactical doctrine prescribes 5 to 7 round bursts. A single infantryman carrying 2 drums possesses 142 rounds without reloading, more than 4 times the 32-round capacity of the Wehrmacht's MP40. This disparity creates divergent logistical equations. A German Panzer Grenadier squad equipped with 2 MP40s and 1 MG34 requires a 3-man MG crew, belt-fed ammunition in 50-round containers, and a trained Richtschütze, primary gunner, with 120 hours of weapons school instruction. A Soviet rifle squad with 6 drum-fed submachine guns distributes suppressive fire capacity across individual infantrymen recruited from collective farms with minimal firearms experience. The fiber bolt buffer attached to the return spring guide rod absorbs recoil impulse sufficient for controllable fire after 8 hours of familiarization training. Industrial velocity had outpaced pedagogical requirements. The weapon system required less training time than the worker needed to produce it. The ppsh-41's arrival at the front during winter 1941 to 1942 dismantled the Red Army's existing tactical framework. The Soviet infantry doctrine had emphasized defensive rifle positions, with soldiers trained to engage targets at 300 to 600 meters using the Mosin Nagant bolt-action rifle. The ppsh-41's effective range of 200 meters with its barrel compensator managing muzzle climb required commanders to abandon this approach entirely. Guards rifle divisions receiving the first mass allocations in December 1941 began training assault groups. 6 to 8 men armed exclusively with ppsh-41s, tasked with closing distance rapidly rather than establishing fire superiority from range. The compensators stamped steel extension beyond the muzzle, featuring cooling slots that aided heat dissipation, kept the barrel group controllable during sustained automatic fire that would have rendered uncompensated weapons unusable after 20 rounds. So with the select fire mechanism, a sliding switch inside the trigger guard with full automatic forward and semi-automatic rear positions required minimal training for conscripts pulled from collective farms and factory floors. Stavka directives issued in February 1942 mandated that rifle companies attacking fortified positions receive ppsh-41 allocation ratios of 1 weapon per 4 soldiers, concentrating firepower in designated shock troops. The 5.45 kilogram weight of a loaded 71-round drum magazine limited individual soldiers to carrying 2 drums maximum during assault operations, but tactical planners accepted this constraint. Saturation fire at close range replaced marksmanship as the Red Army's primary infantry killing method. Concrete dust choked the air inside Factory District Building 17 on September 27, 1942. Where Sergeant Mikhail Nikitin's assault group crouched 35 meters from a German MG, 42 position firing from the 3rd floor window. The machine gun crew had already killed 6 Soviet infantrymen attempting to cross the rubble-strewn courtyard at 900 rounds per minute. Nikitin signaled his 8-man squad, each carrying a ppsh-41 with the 71-round drum magazine, to open simultaneous fire on the window frame. The combined volume reached 6,400 rounds per minute, forcing the MG-42 crew to cease firing and drop below the windowsill for 17 seconds. Soviet riflemen sprinted forward during this suppression, closing to 20 meters before the German crew could resume their position. The tactic exploited a mathematical reality. The MG-42's superior range and accuracy became irrelevant when its crew physically could not operate the weapon. German defensive doctrine positioned two-man machine gun teams in elevated positions covering approach routes, but this assumed attackers would maintain fire discipline and advance by individual movement. Red Army assault groups instead committed 8 drum-fed weapons simultaneously, creating a 71-round sustained barrage that turned masonry into projectile fragments and forced defenders into cover regardless of their fortifications' structural integrity. Anti-tank rifle teams proved equally vulnerable. On October 14, 1942, German Panzerbuchse 39 operators near the Barricadi factory engaged approaching T-34 tanks from ground floor positions 150 meters distant. Before the two-man teams could fire their second 7.92 by 94mm round, requiring 6 to 8 seconds to operate the bolt and reacquire the target, Soviet submachine gunners reached 50-meter range and delivered suppressing fire through window openings. The Panzerbuchse teams abandoned positions or died before completing reload cycles, allowing armor to advance without infantry portable anti-tank opposition. Building assaults demonstrated Spagen's weapon most decisively. Room-clearing operations in the Red October factory complex during November 1942 required continuous fire while moving through doorways and stairwells. The 71-round capacity meant assault troops fired 30 to 40 rounds entering each room, maintained suppression while crossing thresholds, and still retained ammunition for the next engagement without pausing. German defenders armed with 32-round MP40 magazines faced reload requirements after clearing 2 rooms, creating tactical windows where Soviet troops pressed forward during the magazine change. By December 1942, captured German operational orders specifically mentioned enemy drum magazine weapons and their tactical impact. Oberst Wilhelm Adam, 6th Army Adjutant, noted in his diary that German officers increasingly carried captured ppsh submachine guns during counterattacks, finding the sustained fire capability superior to the MP40's capacity limitations in close-quarters engagements where volume overwhelmed precision. By 1945, Soviet factories had delivered 6,027,000 ppsh-41 submachine guns to frontline units, a production velocity that transformed the Red Army's tactical doctrine from theory into steel reality. Entire rifle divisions received automatic weapons at scales the Wehrmacht could not match, where German infantry companies typically fielded 3 to 4 MP40s among 120 men. Soviet rifle companies deployed 20 to 30 ppsh-41s in identical formations, multiplying close-range firepower density by a factor of 7. This disparity forced German units into a logistical crisis. Defending against massed automatic fire required expenditures of 4 to 5 rifle rounds per Soviet submachine gun burst, draining ammunition stocks that Reichsbahn rail networks could no longer replenish at consumption rates. The weapon's chrome-lined barrel, 269mm sections cut from surplus Mosin-Nagant blanks, represented industrial repurposing that German armaments ministries never achieved. The German MP40s and STG-44s suffered extraction failures below -25 degrees Celsius as recoil springs lost tensile strength, jamming bolts mid-cycle. Soviet assault groups exploited this 15-degree operational advantage during pre-dawn attacks, when thermal differentials peaked and Wehrmacht rifles required 20 to 30 seconds of hand warming before achieving cycling reliability. The introduction of 35-round box magazines in 1942 solved the tactical reload problem that plagued the original 71-round drum design. Stamped from 1mm steel with structural ribs added pre-1944, these magazines weighed 0.45 kilograms loaded versus 1.7 kilograms for drums, allowing riflemen to carry 210 rounds in 6 magazines at weights previously required for 142 drum-fed rounds. This 48% ammunition capacity increase directly enabled the deep battle penetrations that characterized Operation Bagration. reconnaissance battalions sustained firefights for 40-minute intervals without resupply, a duration that forced German rearguards into premature retreats rather than risk encirclement. Production velocity translated into replacement rates that German forces could not inflict losses upon faster than Soviet factories replenish stocks. Automotive plant number 367 in Vietzky Polyani manufactured 523 ppsh 41s daily during peak 1944 production, a per-facility output exceeding total monthly MP40 production across all Ermawerke and Hainel plants combined. When the 8th Guards Army entered Berlin with 47,000 submachine guns among 280,000 personnel, Soviet industrial capacity had become lethality itself. The lathe and the stamping press had industrialized killing as systematically as the conveyor belt had industrialized manufacturing. The Karabiner 98K's 13.2 man-hours of precision manufacturing had lost to the ppsh 41's 5.6-hour stamping velocity, and with it, the war. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe for more World War II historical deep dives every week. Thanks for watching.